In ancient times, hundreds of years before the dawn of history, an ancient race of people, the Druids, no one knew who they were or what they were doing. But their legacy remains, hewn into the living rock of Stonehenge. Yes, I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Some of you might have recognized my intro. If you did recognize my intro, just drop a comment in the comment part of this video. Anyway, speaking of Stonehenge, I am reviewing Ken Follett's newest epic piece of historical fiction about Stonehenge. It's his newest novel, my most anticipated read of the year. I was looking forward to this book so much, about Stonehenge, because I have been to Stonehenge. In fact, I may or may not edit a photo of myself into Stonehenge, my visit to Stonehenge. Might edit it, it might show up over here somewhere about at this point in the video. If my editing skills are what they used to be, it should work out that way. But I went to Stonehenge, and the thing was, is when I went to Stonehenge first time, I was like, I wasn't expecting much. I was like, well, it's just some rocks, you know? It's just some rocks, you know? They're like right there, and I'm like, but then I was blown away. My expectation going in was low, and then I was just like floored. I was like, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. My expectation for this book is now, it was way high. Did it meet my expectations, though? We'll get into that. So let's talk about this book. Let's talk about the cover first, because you know I love graphic design and cover illustration. This is pretty cool. I like it. We've got the bird's eye view of the Stonehenge right here. And then in the background, a nice sunset view of, you can see Stonehenge in the background. Then we've got a nice picture of the author also standing in front of Stonehenge. And on the inside of the book, we've got a few cool things, like the inside flap, we've got Stonehenge as it is today. And then on the back flap, we have a thing of Stonehenge, of what it might have looked like in its heyday, or when it was first built. 2500 BC is when I think it was built, at least in this book. According to this book, that's when it was built. I didn't bother to Google that to see if Ken Follett was correct. I'm just trusting that he was. 2500 BC is when this book takes place. And in this book, it's about the building of Stonehenge. Pillars of the Earth. Let's talk about that first, because Ken Follett is one of my favorite novelists of all time. He's in my top 5 favorite writers of all time video. I love Pillars of the Earth. All of his historical fiction is dope. His thriller novels are even super dope. So I was going into this with very lofty expectations. Pillars of the Earth, which is his most famous novel, best-selling novel, probably one of the top 10 best-selling novels in the history of all time. Pillars of the Earth was about 11th century people in England building a cathedral, and you're like, man, that must be a boring book. But it wasn't. Ken Follett made it so exciting. That's why it was such a big seller. Same formula for this book. A bunch of people building a Stonehenge, a stone circle, 2,500 years before Christ. Can he make it interesting? Can he make it as awesome as Pillars of the Earth? And did he? That's what we're going to discuss in the book. There's also a map in the book. I always forget to show the maps sometimes. There is a map in this book about that part of... damn it. I'll edit that out. Here we go. There's the map right there. Map. It's a lovely map. I'm so happy I found it to show you. We'll edit parts of that out, though, so it's a little bit smooth transition. Anyway, let's talk about the book. Does this meet my... Is this as great as Pillars of the Earth? Let's see. Let's get into this. Let's get into this book. It starts out with a few characters. Seft and his 3 brothers. Seft is the youngest, he's the cleverest. Ulf is big and stupid. Cam is kind of like, he's also kind of dumb. And like, I kind of was like, okay, Seft is like sort of like Michael J. Fox and the Back to the Future movies, and Ulf is kind of like Biff, and then Cam is kind of like all the guys that were behind Biff, like egging Biff on to bully Michael J. Fox. Anyway, that's a really bad. But those are our three main characters that we start off with. Cog is their father. He's a mean guy. Then they're kind of in this area around Stonehenge. Joya, Neen and Joya. Neen is a girl. Seft likes her. She's wise and kind. Joya is Neen's younger sister. She's brisk and bossy. And those are kind of our main characters. There's others like Han and Paya and a few others that are kind of, well, there's a lot of characters in here. In fact, there's a bunch of stuff going on in this book. Ken Follett, I don't know, and I don't know how many people even really know 2,500 years before Christ in Southern England, what the people were like, what their habits were like. I mean, we can glean a few things probably. And Ken Follett is probably just doing his best historical, accurate portrayal of these people, but he did kind of put some modern sensibilities into them, which is fine. I mean, we've got books like Clan of the Cave Bear that are melodramas set in caveman times. I mean, this is all fine. You're constructing a story about Stonehenge. We don't know what those people were like. And he's doing his best job, but it starts out with all of these characters kind of young, and I mean like really young. They're like junior high school age. And the book starts out almost kind of naive in its melodrama and it's like intermingling of these young people and how they kind of are falling in and out of love and talking to each other. And I was just like, for 130 pages, that's all we get. And I was like, is this a young adult novel? I was like, kind of like, I was like, is this doesn't, I don't know if, I mean, I don't know how the people talked back then or what they talked about, but we do it in this book. Ken Follett has a group of herders. They herd cows. That's how they sustain themselves. Then we got the farmers, and that's how they sustain themselves. The hunters, they sustain themselves hunting. And then the woodlanders. There's all these groups of people, and they kind of remain in their own little tribes, and they kind of have conflict with each other, but they're kind of sharp enough to know that they need to interbreed. Otherwise, you know, they don't want inbreeding. They want to prevent inbreeding. They know that much about things, at least in this story. And so every now and then they all get together for these sacred rites that happen around this wooden circle structure thing that they've built. And midsummer rites or whatever it is, and they all have an orgy. It's like, I mean, It's orgy. Everybody, fair game, everybody orgies. I was like, okay, now 130 pages in, I'm thinking, okay, this is just a book about ancient hippies. This is just ancient hippies. And kind of the way they were behaving like ancient hippies. The men were, I mean, although they're, you know, we have your typical Ken Follett characters where the bullies are bullies and you hate them, and then the heroes are heroes and you love them. And, you know, Joya is kind of our main character. She's sort of starts out of this young girl stage. All the characters start out as young junior high school age people. And then as they build, what happens is their wooden stone circle gets destroyed and they're like, well, it's not very permanent. Let's build a stone one. And so that's kind of where things pick up about page 130 or 150, where they finally decide, hey, let's build a permanent structure. Let's build a permanent stone structure. And that's where the magic starts. Because I was like kind of disappointed with the first 150 or so pages. I was like, I feel like I'm reading like literally Sweet Valley High, set in 2500 BC. That's what I felt like I was reading. But then Ken Follett, the magic of his storytelling cuts in, because then we're suddenly, I mean, he's kind of already, even in the Sweet Valley High junior high school kid lovey-dovey drama that's going on, we also are very acutely aware that these characters are living a grim, grim, grim existence. Like, they are starving to death most of the time. And they don't like the woodlanders coming in and trampling their crops. The woodlanders don't like the farmers coming into their woods and hunting their... I mean, it's just... And everyone's starving. Everyone is... I mean, and then Ken Follett ratchets up to the true historical fiction that he's known for, where these... prayer circles are so important, and as we go through this adventure with these characters, you know, things burn down. They're trying to figure out how to lift big rocks, move big rocks. Why are we doing it? Throughout this bleak life and existence, why would anybody, I mean, he explores the reasons, like, why would anybody even go to the problem? 2,500 years before Christ, why would these people that live in such bleak existence, barely scraping by, a meager life, why would they take the time to build something like this? What's going on in their heads? And not only that, but just the stuff around them that was like, their beehives, honey, they have to fight bears, they cow stampedes, just all of the different stuff that Ken Follett has these characters go through. Not only that, but murder, assaults, young women trying to not be, taken advantage of by the older men. I mean, Ken Follett and we don't know what the people were like. Ken Follett's doing his best to just kind of, nobody knows. Clan of the Cave Bear was a novel about cavemen, and yet that author sort of gave that story sort of a modern, twist to it. And Ken Follett's kind of doing like that here, like making the women, overtly feminist and things like that. He's kind of putting some modern tropes into this ancient story, which is fine, because I don't know, maybe that's the way they were when they were building Stonehenge. The magic of the story, though, is aside from all the melodrama of the story that's going on with the characters, deep down inside, just like in Pillars of the Earth, these people wanted to create something beautiful to worship, to count the stars, to clock when the sun rises, and just to have a place to gather and pray and worship and do their orgies. Literally, that's what it was for. And now it makes sense. Now it makes sense. Now I know why people that lived in a bleak existence built a stone circle. It's because that's what they had. They ordered this. That was that was their porn hub. It's their fucking porn hub. Just in my head, I was just like, that's fucking why. Ken Follett did a great job of explaining why would these guys build this place. Oh, that's where they all get together, and I don't think I need to explain it to you. I'll let Ken Follett explain it to you in a book. How does this stack up against Pillars of the Earth? Well, I think Pillars of the Earth was written 30 years ago, and it was the only book of its kind, and it was just a benchmark in literature. Literally, in worldwide literature, it was a benchmark. He's kind of following the same formula with this book. A little played out. That being said, I read every word of this with extreme interest, and I enjoyed all the characters. I enjoyed Joya's fiery sort of, hey, let's do something great. I enjoyed Seft and his battle with his brothers and his father. I enjoyed Han and Paya, and that's one of the things about these is they just have simple names like Pooh and Pei and Do and Day and Poor and Seth and I could just go on and on. There's a lot of characters. I will give this a 9.5 out of 10. It was good. If you love Ken Follett, you're going to love this. If you can get through the first 130 pages of Sweet Valley High, 2500 BC version, I think you'll really enjoy the other 800 pages of this novel. Because I did.